Hi, my name is Ayesha. I work at Ledger Prime. We're a multi-strat hedge fund, and we're the leading options maker on both CFI and DeFi. But earlier last year or so, we got the opportunity to be early in NFTs. And my background is, I started off as an attorney, but I was a very early employee at Consensus. So I was so early that I saw crypto kitties literally sitting at my desk that how it just congested Ethereum. So I've seen the evolution of NFTs in my, crypto life. And when apes came along and others came along, as a hedge fund, we wanted to see where our opportunity stands in it, because we could just, as a personal, we could just buy and mint and just hold them. But there's nothing else we could do it on the hedge fund level. So we started talking about the idea NFT derivatives. We're like, look, guys, market at that time was $3 trillion. So we're like, look, there's enough liquidity in the market that anyone who sells or has these NFTs, they should put them up, in the derivatives form and then take collateral against it. And people took us very seriously. Like projects were like, oh, they're talking about something because, they deal with options. So we ended up giving a start to a couple of companies called Mimicry Protocol, Pine Loans, MetaStreet.XYZ. I'm not sure if they're here or not. And what has happened over the years, like as that market was taking off, the entire crypto market just crashed. So we're like now at, a pretty dull point. So that's why, when I proposed this talk, the idea was that we need to talk about that how anyone, who's sitting on like tons, of NFTs, how they can collateralize it. And, just prior to this, these guys were like talking about securities and whatnot, but basically how to make eligible assets that can be traded or that can be stored of value, like in like legit markets. So, but we're at a very different spot. So the current spot we're in right now is that there isn't a lot of liquidity because the lending market of NFTs hasn't really taken off. We were assuming if last year's crash hadn't happened, there would have been a lot of like borrowing and lending of NFTs by now, because at the end of the day, they're just sitting in your wallet. They're not, there's not a lot of value to it. So if there's a protocol that can let you earn interest by borrowing and lending, that idea was great. The other thing is that unless and until you have an inventory of the asset, we haven't figured out a way on how to hedge it against derivatives. And we have started seeing that unless and until it's like the top tier projects, so like unless apes or the top tier ones, the other projects kind of like lost the value over time. So we've started seeing that how can we bring their values back in order to like stabilize the market. One thing we've started seeing that, marketing campaigns, obviously that's always been a huge thing about crypto as, as an industry. But we've started seeing like real asset connection to it. One project we invested in like last year, Revel, for instance, they've started collaborating. Initially, it was supposed to be a Pope, but now they've started collaborating with artists on TikTok, to distribute their tokens. So we've seen such pivots happen, like, on the NFT like marketplace sites. But then coming back to derivatives, one thing is that they've turned out to be a bit more volatile than liquid instruments. And they're even in the very like downside market, the value hasn't gone down for like these blue chip products. So Now we're thinking that, when we're doing market analysis, that what's the incentive to put this on, as a derivative form, because, you're locking up like a huge collateral for an asset that, is not even as liquid in the market. So right now, very few, I mean, almost to none, interact with like, market makers. Um, but the inventory is, very much on the minimum. Um, I think the market is pretty small for us to get involved. But if it's an ERC20 token, that still makes it like a larger set of market. Um, Obviously, like I said, that when we proposed this idea, that, around that time there was like a huge retail interest around NFTs, and NFTs like, as lending and borrowing, NFTs as derivatives in the markets. So once we see the retail coming back, obviously the liquidity is going to come back, and then we would see like couple of marketplaces take off, right? So obviously the one with the most traction right now is MetaStreet, uh, Pine Loans, and Mimicry, as I said. So Mimicry is still in test net, but MetaStreet and Pine Loans are up and running. Pine Loans has a bit of a low volume. So if you're sitting on like large sets of like NFTs, if you're trying to, borrow and lend against them, and if you're trying to create liquid markets, yes, sorry. Oh, sorry. And if you're trying to create liquid markets around them, you're not the first person. We've thought about this, a couple of years now, and this is an idea thoroughly discussed amongst market makers. So that was my reason of like, bringing it here. Um, Hopefully by the time, I speak at the next year, NFT.NYC, I'm literally presenting the market scales and the numbers that these protocols that I just quickly talked about have, come up to. Um, do I have a minute for Q&A? Okay. Any questions? No questions? Okay, so I don't have, okay, I'm not allowed to take. Okay, so I will be outside of the room. Um, Anything related derivatives, borrowing and lending, yes, please come and find me. It's an emerging topic for the next cycle, but happy to discuss it with anyone. Thank you.